Hello and welcome to From the BLN, the Burnley podcast. Welcome, the first podcast of 2024. Happy New Year to you all, wherever you're listening from. Delighted to say we've got the full pod squad. Trying out that as a new term to describe us all. So myself, Andrew Greaves, Simon Evans, Paul Woodhouse, Chris Borden and Justin Connolly. I'm not sure the pod squad will catch on, but we'll see. Before we move on to matters in hand, which is the transfer window, which has been open 4 days and we've still not signed anyone. I'm not quite sure what Aisling Pace is up to. I'm sure she's preparing some social media onslaught for a player that's far out of our reach. But no signings just yet, but plenty to talk about. We'll park that to a little bit later. We'll also discuss tonight, as you're listening on Friday mornings, Spurs Cup game. Burnley travel to Ange Postecoglou's side in the FA Cup. But we thought we'd start with a bit of a look back, or at least a fleeting visit to what has been a year of two halves, 2023. The joy of winning, the absolute elation of winning the championship with plenty of time to spare in the first half, and then the struggles in the Premier League season. Now, what I'm going to do is going to ask all the chaps for their player of the year first of all. So, player of the calendar year. Now, this is going to be quite difficult because some of the people who might have been contenders are either no longer with us or seem to have disappeared off the face of the earth at the Gawthorpe Triangle, where players go to disappear. But we'll see what we get. So, who wants to start us off? Justin. You've got a mischievous glint in your eye. Who's your player of 2023?
I was. Since you've just dropped this on me, and I've not had a chance to think about it properly. I was going to go for Nathan Teller, but I'm not going to go for the obvious. I'm going to go for Lyle Foster because I think the season that he's had so far. I know it's been a little bit up and down, but. I think he's the one player this season, arguably, that has really shown that he belongs in this division. And I don't want to hark back too much to last year. Last season was brilliant. We all loved it. We're all going to choose the same highlight, but I think the way Lyle kicked on at the start of the season gave us that little bit of glimmer of hope, didn't he? And since he's come back into the team, he's sort of picked up where he's left off. His goal last week was fantastic. His all-round performances since he's come back into the side have been great. And I'm really looking forward to seeing what he does for the rest of the season.
Excellent. Bit of a left field choice. I didn't expect Lyle Foster quite so soon to be kind of heralded as a player of the year. Simon, are you sticking traditional? Are you sticking with a player from last season, or are you also looking for a glimmer in this season's?
No, I think I'm going to be a stickler for like the calendar side of it, and I think personally, anyone who's the player of the year has to have played both sides of the year. So there's very few players actually. Why? Because you can't be player of the year if you only played 6 months of it. You can you? It's not player of the 6 months. It's player of the year, 2023 as a whole, as a collective entity.
Lyle played in the last. He's been with us for a year now, hasn't he? He played last season.
He did, yeah.
Scored a goal.
I'm not disputing that. I'm saying I'm going to go for a player who I think is undervalued, underrated. I see people every week in the ratings on forums and on social media questioning him, and I just don't get it. And he's at the start of this season, it seemed like company decided that he agreed with those critics and he wasn't going to be featuring, having been part and parcel of our side. I'm talking about Josh Brownhill. For me, not a superstar. Not a player, but he's one of the few players who I think you could imagine another Premier League club coming in January and saying we could do with him. because he's a consistent performer, and he was there all the way through it. Came out of the relegation team into a side, made himself a big part of a promotion team, and after what looked like a little bit of a snub at the start of the year, fought his way back into the side and has been consistent again. Never brilliant, but I'll take a player like that, and I think he deserves some acknowledgement. So Josh Brownhill for me.
Yeah, interesting choice there. I think I 100% would agree with your rationale. I think he is that kind of player. And I think it is quite telling that you always get a Wolves, an Everton, these kind of clubs that you would perhaps put a step above us in terms of stature, in terms of, Premier League experience, looking at someone like Brownhill and thinking he can be part of that kind of collective.
Yeah, exactly.
Effort to kind of, not just survive, but push up a table. Woody, what about you? What about your player of 2023, player of 6 months, player of December, whatever caveat you're going to put on your player?
Phil Cavner.
I'm going to say Steve Harper. It's going to be Steve Harper.
Exactly. I couldn't have them both. But if I can't have him, I think I might go for Jordan Beyer. Purely and simply because he looked the class act, obviously, in the Championship. And even though he didn't make a seamless transition into the Premier League, we look a decidedly worse back four and side without him. And besides him having one or two niggles, a bit of a dubious hamstring and a funny-looking knee, he's definitely somebody you would definitely pick first or second on your team sheet, I think.
Interesting, yeah. What do you think about Beyer, Simon?
I think that's a good shout. I think he
fits your criteria of being foot in both teams, doesn't he?
Absolutely, and he hasn't found it easy going into the Premier League, but that's kind of what we expected a little bit, and it's understandable. But I thought he was absolute class when he came into the side last year. I mean, the Beckenbauer thing, it stands up. He's learning, isn't he, this year? I think he's also realised that his priority is to be a defender. He's cut down a little bit perhaps on the runs out of the back, and doesn't get as much chance to be that ball playing centre half. But I totally think that's a good shout from Woody. Yeah.
And you also, it's also a bit of rare praise for a Woody view there from Simon. It's amazing to think that he is only 23 as well, isn't it? I mean, he looks a little bit. He certainly looks a lot older than he did last year. That's obviously the Premier League taking its toll. But you kind of think about where he will be as a centre half in 5 years' time. You'd expect him to be a full German international. You'd expect him to have got used to the top flight of English football. You probably expect him to be at a far bigger club than Burnley. So, Beyer, I think, is a really good shout.
Not on loan at Hull, you would hope. Yeah.
Not on loan at Hull, unless he does something to really piss company off, because I can imagine that trip down the M62 is reserved only for players who fall foul of Vincent. Chris, what about you? You gone with somebody predominantly featured last year, or somebody who's made the transition?
Again, sticking to Simon's criteria, it's got to be someone that's played a good part in the second half of last season and the first half of this. So I've gone with Johan Gudmundsson. We all know what to expect from him. He puts in the graft, and he's got moments of quality, fabulous left foot, and I think a lot of people thought fitness-wise he might have been finished, but Vincent obviously came in and saw the quality he could add. Well, even moments as a 10, moments on either flank. You look at he contributes key goals as well. Set pieces, and I think the side looks an awful lot better when he's in it this season. It looks more solid.
Yeah,
and more. Just it's just one of those reliable players. He's going to be a 7 out of 10 minimum every week, I think. And you can hang your hat on. He's one of them pros you love to have in your dressing room, because you know what you're getting every week.
Yeah, I think he's a great shout. I think you're absolutely spot on. I think he adds that balance. I think we look more balanced. I think we just look like, he's that experience, isn't he? If you think about when we started the season, we had literally no real Premier League experience in there. So yeah, I I'd agree. I think he's a great choice. I also went for Bayer for the same reason in terms of him being a kind of
picked
foot
Mike
in.
Trezor onto it, did he? Yeah.
It's just about magic, Mike. It could have been obvious, you could have gone for, Barnes or Benson because of their goals against those down the road. You could have gone for Teller as the obvious choice. But I think Bayer is still, of all of the company signings, Bayer is the one that I'm most fascinated by. And he's probably not going to be that first £100 million player, because he's, centre halves don't tend to go for that kind of money. But I think he's the one which we will see at World Cups in the latter part of World Cups in years to come, possibly as a German captain. I think it'd be really, we don't tend to have players like that at Burnley in terms of where you can point and go, you know what, he earned his kind of crust at Burnley. That's where he became a proper player who then goes on to win a World Cup or a European Championships.
So I'm not touting him for a move here, but I was watching a bit of Sky earlier, and they're talking about Bayern looking at Tomori, who's obviously done ever so well at Milan. Another Cobham graduate that Chelsea have deemed not good enough, or they need it for the FFP scenario. Delete where appropriate. And you're thinking, well, supposedly that's unlikely to happen. Milan don't want to sign, but you think, Bayern Munich surely know about Bayer, before he landed at Burnley, and German under-21 skipper previously, and you wonder whether they might earmark him. But Tomori's obviously got that pace that you need at that elite level as well. But you wonder whether they've half an eye on Bayer as well.
Yeah. The only caveat for Bayer is that he seems to be quite injury prone, particularly this season, doesn't he? And he missed quite a spell last season. So that's the only caveat you're putting in. But he has been integral in the shift of style that company's instituted, and he's that kind of player. So I think that's a good shout.
Yeah, Tomori, of course, former Hull City loanee. more on the Tigers a little bit later on in today's show. Go on then. Let's get this over with. I think we all know what this is. The question should really be: is anybody not going to pick Benson's winner at Ewood? And let's just remind any Rovers fans being subjected to this in workplaces. Burnley winning the league at Ewood Park as their kind of promotion hopes, or finishing anywhere decent hopes, evaporated. Go on, we might as well go around the table. Simon, we'll start with you. Moment of the year.
What can you say? I could come up with some contrarian left field version if I thought about it, I'm sure, but it just can't be beaten, can it? It just can't. You can't beat that. No.
Talking of contrarian, potential flies in the ointment, our director of contrarianism, Paul Woodhouse. You're not allowed to choose Phil Kavanagh's back heel against Hereford in the 4th division either. So
no, that was shit.
In the street against Woody.
Exactly. That's through my legs. No, because that's so patently obvious. But I will choose another Blackburn moment, or another couple of moments to make up for that. Ashley Barnes first against Bastards when he pummeled the keeper into the back of the net. Everything at that particular moment kind of came together. We didn't let him have a touch of the ball.
Can't pick that. That's the wrong year.
Is it
2022? Huh?
That's 22.
That's not contrarian.
That's pretty contrarian. I'm not in the right.
I'm going to allow it anyway.
Yeah, I'll just throw it in there. That's proper contrarian, and also from that image of Teller to Dominic Hyam going 3-0, which is now my screensaver.
A beautiful moment.
That's gorgeous.
Yeah.
I think we will allow the who put the keeper in the Bastards net moment. What an incredible moment. But of course, Benny at Ewood. Justin, I can't imagine you'll be a voice of disquiet against that.
Absolutely not. That was obviously it's the best moment, not just of the last 12 months, but probably the best moment of the last 10 years, isn't it? Let's be honest. If I had to pick another one, I'd probably say the 2-0 win over Sheffield United at home a few games before that, which kind of really sort of sealed the deal, didn't it? Everybody knew we were going up. Everybody knew we were probably going to win the title. But that when Foderingham got sent off in that game quite early on, it was like a real sort of, there was a bit of a sigh of relief that we're probably going to win that game, and then we managed to contrive to not win another game till that night at Ewood. So it's got to be that Benson goal, hasn't it? It's got to be.
Yeah, all part of the plan, Chris. Do we think that kind of taking the foot off the gas to win it at Ewood?
Yeah, exactly. So the best moment was purposefully losing at home to QPR, so we could win the league at Ewood. easily the moment of the year. Yeah, we're just going to we're just going to roll over to our only home defeat of the season, just so we can go on and win the league on our bitter rivals' own turf. And Josh Brownhill with the inflatable trophy and being told to calm down by Vincent. And it's just a shame. I say it was just a shame. There were only 2,500 away fans, because every other opportunity Rovers have had to milk the away fans. They've allowed Leeds to take 6,000-7,000 there, and Preston take 6,000-7,000 there, so they're happy to take their money. But and curiously lost both of those games as well. So it don't matter how many are in the away end. Their home form's almost as bad as Burnley's this season.
Yeah, same old bastards, always losing. There we go. What about disappointing? Most disappointing or worst moment or low point of the year? Justin, we'll start with you for this one.
God, not me again. My biggest disappointment this year is pretty obvious, that we didn't sort of bring the team from the Championship winning side into the Premier League and see what it was capable of. That's my biggest disappointment. I know what the plan is. I know what they're doing, but I would have loved to have seen, Teller and Maatsen and Harwood Bellis playing for us in the Premier League. And just, I think that team, a team that wins the Championship by such a wide margin, is probably going to be more competitive on day one in the Premier League than the team that we ended up starting the season with. So that's my disappointment. Realise that's water under the bridge now, and we can't go back to that. But I can't believe that we would have had a worse first half to the season than we've had if we'd gone down that route instead.
Yeah, would he agree with Justin, or have you got your own low point of 2023?
Ancillary to that, I think our transfer dealings window, etc., have been more than slightly disappointing once we start looking back at it and getting a bit of 2020 vision over it. I think some of the players that we wanted in order to be able to do what Justin was saying and get that transition, we weren't able to do for whatever particular reasons there were. And then we obviously flailed around a bit, trying to find the right side again. And I think it stemmed from what we did in the transfer market, unfortunately. And we still, at this point, still saying we need those same players. Even Vincent's admitting that he needs those players in this particular window.
Yeah. Simon?
I thought about this one after you suggested it, and it's a bit similar to Justin's, really, but I was going to say the Manchester City game was the biggest disappointment for the reasons that Justin outlined, but also just how far off we were, and the fact that we went into it with what felt like we were treating it as an experiment, and I think that did set a really bad tone for the start of the season, that first game, because not that losing at home to Man City was the disappointment. You sort of expect that, obviously, but the team that we put out, the silliness with no left back, people playing out of position, no sign of the players that were still left from last year there, and just that sort of mess, tactically naive approach and everything. And I was really disappointed because, we were lucky and smart enough to start this podcast ahead of the pre-season, weren't we? So we were all really into those pre-season friendly games and watching them because we knew we were going to be talking about them, as opposed to just the regular sort of, how did we get on in a pre-season friendly abroad? And that Benfica game like it conned us, didn't it? It tricked us into believing we were playing the ball around against Benfica, a Champions League team. We look up for this. We're not going to do bad this year. You know, maybe these people saying top half aren't crazy. Like, look at this. Vincent's done it again. These new lads have come in and they're all popping the ball around. And then we come out against Manchester City and look just massively out of depth. So that City game for me was a bit of enough of a buzzkill. Everyone's gone quiet, it seems.
No, I agree. I think the City game is probably one that was a big disappointment. Interestingly, Owen Dodgson, he of the goal or a goal versus Benfica back in the squad. Maybe Vinny's getting the band back together.
Sounds like he's going back out. He said he's going back out.
There we go. He's not getting the band back together. There we go.
Go.
All of the hope of the Benfica game snatched away from me again. Chris, what about you? What about your disappointment?
Well, from a match perspective, it's probably the West Ham game when you're to be leading with sort of 3 minutes to go and capitulating, conceding two absolutely dreadful goals from a defensive perspective, and when you were crying for that, just a boost, a shot in the arm, and that would have been a real boost against the European Conference winners. A good, as we've seen since. What a fabulous result it would have been, but and even possibly topped by the refereeing, and I say in inverted commas, performance of Stuart Atwell at Villa last week. And it still blows my mind, a few days on, that how we can contrive to give a penalty in those circumstances, in the dying moments, having failed to see one of the most blatant handballs you'll see at the other end as well. It's just utter nonsense. And I was reading the ESPN referee, the VAR review of the week.
Yeah,
basically saying that if Atwell hadn't pointed to the spot, it wouldn't have been given the penalty. And you're looking at so many referees now who are almost choosing to ignore incidents, thinking that VAR might pull them up on it. And he's got to be 100% sure they're Atwell, and he can't be. He just cannot be 100% sure that that's a penalty, even though he's got a fabulous view. He's just been conned by a dive. Let's have it right. And it's still. I've not got over it yet.
Still sounding very bitter. Duran due to go out on loan as well. I'm not quite sure if Duran will pass a medical. I mean, I presume they're still
horrific injury that was.
Humpty Dumpty style, trying to put him back together again. The way he went down, it's amazing how it was his ankle when he kicked the bottom of his boot. But enough about that. Right, we'll be back after this short break with a preview of tonight's game at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Right then, so we're going to leave 2023 behind. I think the way it ended, and Chris's disappointment over the refereeing, I'm sure he'll still be off Chris's Christmas card list come Christmas of this year, Stuart Atwell. But we do travel to Spurs tonight. We've got a game live on ITV against high-flying Tottenham Hotspur. Not quite so high-flying as they once were earlier in the season, but Ange Postecoglou has changed the culture by the looks of things at Spurs. What do we make of this game? It's a weird one, isn't it? As soon as that third round draw was made, you just kind of think, oh, God, it's probably a trip you can do without. It's away at Spurs. Perhaps the plus point is we get on terrestrial TV, gives people a chance to kind of see us if they've not seen us. But Woody, are you expecting much out of tonight's game?
Nothing, really, to be honest with you. It's one of those you really don't want to get anybody injured. I'm assuming there are certain people who he's recalled, etc. They might be putting in a shop window for this particular game, etc. But it's still Spurs, isn't it? And every now and again in cup games, we do have a little bit of a ding dong with these buggers, and it can get quite entertaining. And I can imagine that they're going to be a little bit more gung ho than we'd expect, and won't be at full full pelt either. In fact, they haven't been at full pelt for a bit, have they? So we'll see what they come out with. So it may be entertaining, but I don't think I'd be wanting to travel down there. Let's put it that way.
Simon, you said earlier we were due a cup run. Tongue in cheek, or
no, we are due
serious
a cup
hope of a cup run this season.
Look, I mean, Sean will never admit it, but his priority was to get out of the cups as quickly as possible, and so he could focus on the relegation. And there was a slight echo of that a little bit in Company's comments this week when he said he thought it was a good draw. Now, he dressed it up in the view that you have to beat good teams on the way to the final if you're going to get there anyway. So rather than waste time playing lower division teams and getting all the way to the quarters or the semis and then losing to Spurs, better off to find out whether you can beat Spurs or not now, which was a really interesting way of saying it's a good draw because we're in a relegation battle and we don't have to worry about the cup after Spurs knock us out. But I really hope he pits a strong side. I really hope he puts the first choice side out because we've been building a bit of momentum. I don't think anything's gained at this stage in the season by mixing it up and giving players a run out who he doesn't think are really first team starters. So I don't want to see some ultra experimental side. I'd like to see us go for it. Spurs probably will play an experimental side because they've had a lot of injuries though, so they might be restricted in how much experimenting they can do. But I'd really like to see. I mean, we are due a cup run. I mean, and he can lift you. He can lift you. I mean, people just seem to have this attitude now that a cup run is going to it adds games. It's a distraction. It can't help. Look, anything that gives us a boost at this stage is gonna help. I think the players and their morale. If we can go and beat Tottenham and go on a bit of a cup run, how does that not give us the belief that we might be able to beat bigger clubs in the second half of the season? So I really hope he goes for it and picks his strongest side out there and goes there and tries to take on Spurs. But I fear that he'll fit into the conforming approach of most Premier League managers and not really go for it.
Chris, there are going to obviously be a couple of changes. Sander Berge suspended, Jordan Bayer, who we were trumpeting earlier, injured, definitely not going to play. Do you agree with Sam? Would you like to see minimal changes, just those where that are necessary? Or do you think actually it's a chance for him to have a look at, reintegrating one or two players and seeing what they do?
Well, I'm thinking, they don't play Luton until a week on Monday, don't they? So they've got like a week and a half before the next game. So there's no reason to rest anyone, is there? So, I'm at the same. You can have this debate. I really don't see the point in bringing at this stage now bringing Muric in and playing Connor Roberts because he's not played for a few weeks. Blah blah blah. I'm with Simon. I'd like to go. Let's say Spurs have 11 players out. They've not. Madison, who was so good at the turf earlier this season, he's not fit. They've still got the ability to play. I believe they've recalled Jed Spence from Leeds, who's been doing a job in the Championship, but. So they do have quality in depth, Spurs, obviously. But if they pick a weakened side and Burnley go full tilt, or as full tilt as they can without Berger and Bayer, then they have every chance. Like Woody says, there has been some. Even the if you go back to I think it was 2014 when they drew one apiece at the turf when Big Volksy came back from injury and scored. And then we went down to White Hart Lane and Marvin Sordell scored his goal for Burnley. And even though, they ended up losing the game 4-2, but had a good goal. You think about the League Cup tie under Stan, Stevie Davis scoring and, after Gus Poyet had put them in front. And obviously, 15 years ago this week was the second leg of the League Cup semi-final, famously. So it's you go back 40 odd years to Billy Hamilton tearing them apart down there. It's historically it's there, isn't it? It's I don't know. We used to have this debate with Sean sort of off camera, and part of the Burnley Express's newspaper group is the Wigan Post, and I speak to their correspondent Paul Kendrick, and Wigan got relegated, 2 or 3 days after winning the cup, and they're never going to get back to the Premier League. Let's have it right, unless they get another Dave Whelan Mark II. But would they swap that moment? I mean, it wasn't in the sun, but you know what I mean. He's chucking it down, but that one moment will live with those Wiganers for all time. They've got a pot on the shelf that you can never take away, and it's just. We see those boards around, when you go to the Emirates and you see, FA Cup winners in, whatever year and, Premier League winners, blah, blah, blah. It's just another one of those to add. I mean, Burnley have started adding, second division winners, haven't they, on the boards before the games and so on and so forth. To be able to add that would be unbelievable. We've all dreamt of it, seeing Burnley in a cup final. And to actually go and win it would be just beyond belief. But, see, if you go and beat Spurs, it might open up. You never know, do you? It's. I'd love them to go full tilt at it, live on primetime TV on a Friday night. No Corrie, let's get stuck into it.
No Corrie.
Yeah,
that should be the ITV tagline, isn't it? No Corrie.
Why not?
No Corrie getting pushed back for that. I mean, the Manx Cup was shit until we won it on penalties that year, wasn't it?
Hey, we'll never forget the Sherpa van.
Provided us we are only win over Blackburn for donkey's years, so I'll take the Manx Cup anytime.
Yeah, exactly.
110 years since we last won the FA Cup. Justin, could we win it again on the anniversary of that famous game that we all remember so well?
So well, yeah. Well, I've got a bit of a FA Cup pedigree because my parents went to the cup final in '62 for their honeymoon.
Wow!
So yeah. I still got the program, but yeah, of course we can win it. Of course we can. Why not? Somebody's got to win it, haven't they? I mean, I agree with everybody else. We should absolutely go full tilt. Try and beat Spurs. I think one of the points that company was making is that you'd be pretty unlucky to draw another top side like Spurs until you get a little bit deeper into it. And picking up on Chris's point there, I'm pretty sure that if you took a vote on whether you wanted to either win the FA Cup or stay in the Premier League, you had to choose one or the other. I don't think. I'm pretty sure not everybody would choose staying in the Premier League, would they? I mean, imagine actually winning something that is like a top flight, first class competition like the FA Cup. It would be wonderful for everybody. Even if we did go down, I don't think we'd sink like a stone like Wigan did. I think we would remain competitive. So yeah, especially with that gap to the next game, giving us a chance to sort of rest the players. Then there's no reason not to go with a full strength team. Another consideration, of course, is this team is learning. That's the whole point of playing these games. So to get a game against a one of the top teams in the country without Premier League points being at stake, it's a useful exercise in that regard. If nothing else, gives us more minutes, takes us, beyond where we are, and gives us a little bit of a chance to bed these players in even more and build on what we've achieved over the last couple of months, improving the form a bit.
Yeah, I think I'd agree. And I absolutely take your point about would I stay in the Premier League over winning the FA Cup, or would I want to win the FA Cup over staying in the Premier League? I tell you now, I would absolutely want to win the FA Cup.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
I would quite happily, if somebody said to me, you're going to go down and you're going to spend a year in the Championship, then get promoted the year after, you could offer me 3 more years in the Championship just to get to Wembley and win an FA Cup. As long as you don't sink like Wigan, you're competitive, you keep building, you get back to the Premier League. Yeah, I think FA Cup glory. That, just think about if you were at Wembley, everyone listening at home, if you're at Wembley, think about that moment when Wade Elliott's goal hit the back of the Sheffield United net. Imagine having that in an FA Cup final. That's what football's about, isn't it? It's about moments. It's not about, I don't know, maybe it is about seasons. Maybe I'm kind of being a bit too romantic about it, but it's about the moments, isn't it, Simon?
No, you're absolutely right. And there's far too much from fans we're not accountants, right? We're not the ones that an accountant will say, if we go down, we lose X million in revenue from television, blah, 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 and our 3-year plan, that's going to disrupt this and that. Fair enough. That's their job, right? But as football fans, we don't have to think like that. You know, we want those moments. We want those things. I mean, even we would joke about the Sherpa Van Trophy, but I saw a photo on one of the sort of Burnley memory Facebook pages the other week with the lads wearing this t-shirt with a minibus going down.
I had one of them.
Yeah, and the memories of that day come back, and going down the motorways, getting to service stations, and we took like whatever it was, 30-odd thousand there. More people there than there were at England, Scotland the week after. It was an absolutely incredible. The game was poor and we lost it, but that almost was like didn't matter. It was like that was the rebirth of our club, really, going back to Wembley and those sort of numbers, and we're still here and all that kind of thing. And you'll never forget that moment. I wasn't there for Wade Elliott's goal, but anyone who was would not forget that. They're just special moments, and for Burnley to get to the FA Cup final, let alone to win it, would be absolutely fantastic. And I think any Burnley fan would rather have that. Let's not think like accountants, Let's think like football fans.
Christ, we're going to win it, aren't we? We're genuinely. This is.
I've got shivers down my spine.
This is Simon's Burnley 4, Chelsea 1 all over again. What could possibly go wrong?
I didn't predict anything. I said it would be. Yeah.
I thought we were
Let's
winning
book the hotels now.
Yeah, get it booked out.
I was talking about.
It's got me flat back.
Yeah. Talking about the Spurs. Talking about the Spurs semi-final. I was pondering what suit I was going to wear for the final.
He's got to be a mimic of the Liverpool Spice Boys, hasn't it? Nice and Marnie. Just imagine you in a Martin Bell-esque. Could you have said that? Beige suit there, but
look like ice cream salesman, doesn't
it? Right, let's have another quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to be discussing Hull City, and we'll tell you why in a little bit. We'll be back after this. Right then, so what does Hull City have to do with the Burnley FC podcast? Well, it appears that after we chatted about Southampton being in for Benson, which broke just as we were recording the debrief from the Villa game, and it seems now that apparently, for whatever reason, relations between Burnley and Southampton are particularly non-existent. I think it's over somebody called Nathan Teller, who appears to be doing bits in Germany these days. But that is not the end of the Benson saga. It seems that Hull City are now favourites for the little Belgian magician's signature. But not only that, also interested in Anass Zaroury, having already taken Scott Twine at the start of the season. Now, I'm not sure what the rules are, and I've not had time to check them, but I presume you can't have 3 players in the same club in the Championship. But it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, we've talked a lot on this podcast about, the class of 23 and the lack of chances they'd got. And actually, I think it's probably fair to say it was inconceivable in the summer that Zaroury and Benson would, A, not be part of this Clarets Premier League team, but B, we could be facing a January exodus of both those players, and not to the likes of Juventus, AC Milan, all of these big teams that were linked with these two in the summer. Woody, what the hell has gone on to go from that position where it's inconceivable to now looking likely that one, if not both, will exit Turf Moor before the end of January?
It's a big ask, is that? I know. What have I done? I mean, on one hand, you can say that, one, we either don't know anything about football, which is valid. But, there's also that point whereby maybe that step up to the Premiership, and we mentioned on the last pod how Benson wasn't a regular starter, and you'll see on the Twitters and various forums, etc., how Benson is now some form of world beater. He genuinely wasn't. Yeah, he scored some lovely goals. He came on with some fantastic cameos, but very rarely did he have a run in the side, starting and then continuing. He either got an injury or he played better coming on towards 60 minutes or whatever and changed the game. He was almost our talisman in that respect last year. It wasn't as if he played 90 minutes week in, week out over 37 games and basically, ran the whole attacking foray against our opponents. That simply didn't happen. So the idea that he may not have stepped up because he has those injuries, he's not physically strong. He wasn't physically strong in the Championship, let alone in the Premier League. I don't know why. I mean, I don't know why we necessarily would have expected him to make that big step up. And obviously, it hasn't happened for whatever reasons that's been. Zaroury's slightly different, but he tailed off after he'd been to the World Cup. He wasn't the same player again. After he came back, he had two seasons in essentially in the Championship. And then after that sending off, nothing going. And I don't see any reason as to why you would swap Koleosho and now Odebear out for either of those two and JBG on the right-hand side. That makes infinitely more sense. So either you can have them, squandering their time playing reserve team under 23, whatever the devil they're doing these days, or put them out on loan, put them in the shop window, etc., and do whatever we're going to do with them. Yeah, that's pretty much it, I would have thought. Scott Twine's not coming back for any particular reason. They're going to try and keep some form of Burnley front line at Hull, aren't they?
Yeah, I think it was more just surmising that you can't have three, and if they wanted the two
exactly.
wingers. Chris, I mean, Sasha told us in the summer, I think we had it as a bit of an exclusive, that Manuel Benson, he's not going anywhere. He was linked with AC Milan, and I think Sasha is quite well in with Benny's people. But it's clear that company doesn't see either of Zaroury and Benson as being up to the task in the Premier League. Do you think one or both of them have been a little bit unlucky? I guess Zaroury, with his sending off in that first game, might count himself a bit unlucky. Or do you think it is just a case of them not making the grade?
Well, Benny's made of glass, isn't he? I mean, the harsh point. I mean, I think we're all the sadness with this case with me is that, I mean, when the first reports came out, there was a suggestion that he would go to Southampton on loan with a view to a permanent transfer. Now, we're all thinking that if Burnley, as appears likely, end up back in the Championship, you've got a player that's ripped it up there. Now, why wouldn't we want that player to try and replicate what he did last season if they're back in the Championship? Because not all these, I say these talented wide players aren't going to come down with Burnley. There are all sorts of. I mean, we know Koleosho's obviously. Well, it looks like he's out for the remainder of the season, but there's a lot of noise about Koleosho, in Italy and America, and I'm sure there maybe clubs in Serie A looking at him, etc. And Odebear, who again looks a magnificent prospect, and I'm sure someone might take a punt on him were Burnley to be relegated. But that's just a shame for me. Again, a lot of truth in what Woody says. Benson wasn't starting week in, week out. He was coming on and influencing games, and we remember that that magical spell of the 4 identical Iron Robin type goals towards the end of the season, including one a few miles down the road right now. But I mean, that's just been a crying shame from Benson's perspective. Zaroury, again, he didn't feature in all the pre-season games, and then the opening day he's not, he's on the bench, and the misfortune to get sent off, which sort of really held him back. And again, he's despite results, it wasn't a case of like, well, they were sort of mixing and matching, trying to get performances, but he still seemed some way down the pecking order. He had that performance at Salford where. Off the top of my head, I think he did a hand in every goal, hadn't he, that night?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah, pretty much.
And then wasn't involved in the following games back in the Premier League, and you felt then that there's something amiss here. Say whether something's, let's say whether it may be, I'd say I hate talking about sort of the rumours from Bert's dog's cousin's grandma, who says he's got, there might be an attitude thing, there might be a fallout. You never know, But there's something's not quite right behind the scenes for him to have played so little a part this season. It's absolutely baffling to me. As you say, it was being linked with Juventus, Borussia Dortmund, and clubs like this, and to be next thing you know, he might end up at Hull for 6 months. It's some turnaround that.
Yeah, some turnaround, but I guess Justin will always have Salford away, won't we? We'll always have that memory of Zaroury. Oh, and the cross for Barnes, of course, to the Rovers keeper. What a delicious cross!
That was beautiful. That was my favourite moment of his. I can't say I'm that surprised about Benson being talked about leaving. I mean, he's clearly not going to play that much, is it? There's clearly a lot of players in front of him in the queue, and he has that special place in all our hearts after that goal at Ewood. But he did that four times in a row, didn't he? You're not going to be able to do that in the Premier League. As Manchester United's Anthony has found out, he did it like twice, didn't he? And then they got found out, and then seems pretty easy to stop. So I'm not surprised. It's better for him if he's going to get regular game time somewhere else, surely. And also, I think, as we said, last week, the longer he doesn't play, the more that last season fades into the memory, and the more his value begins to dip to us. And if we're going to have to, to make the project work, we have to sell players, don't we? That's the whole point of it. So, but a little bit more surprised that Zaroury's not featured. He seemed to me, as I've said many times, to be the player with perhaps the most potential coming up out of the Championship. So I'd be very disappointed to see him go. But again, if he's not going to play, then the cynic in me says, let's cash in on him while he's still worth more than we paid for him.
And Simon, just in thinking like an accountant there, just after we told him not to, but I think we've spoken, haven't we, Simon, on this podcast about the fact that this year, we get to the edge of the box and we don't know what to do with it. Both Benson and Zaroury were the masters of goals from distance, weren't they? And I take on board, Justin's point about you're not going to be able to get away with 4 games in a row pulling off the same trick. But you just wonder whether either of them would offer a slightly different dynamic to what we have got. The Brun Larson goal against Luton is probably the only kind of goal that is what you would describe as Benson or Zaroury-esque, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, Zaroury is, for me, the biggest surprise of the two, really. Don't forget, before the World Cup, Morocco pushed him to change his nationality and go so he could get a last spot on the World Cup and go out there. Now, he didn't really feature in that World Cup, but actually one of my little personal highlights of last year was being out in Qatar and then seeing these images of these two lads in Burnley tops with a Moroccan flag, like so excited about one of our players being at the World Cup like that.
Yeah. And
it felt like he was on the up, and the clubs he was being linked to and so on. And you think about the directness of him, it's not just the shots as well, but, the cross for Ashley Barnes' famous header where, Zaroury just goes down the left and whips in a proper cross like that, straight onto his head. We could have done that with that a few times. I don't know what's gone on at all. No one knows. It's a mystery, isn't it? And there was nothing at all in the way Zaroury played last season that sent a signal to me that, that's probably not going to work in the Premier League. Nothing at all about it that indicated that he wouldn't be able to make the step up. You hope, everyone's got to make some sort of step up, and you hope they can do it. No guarantees either, but there was nothing there. Whereas Benson, you might say, he's a bit lightweight. If he doesn't get any joy out of the fullback when he starts his little jinking, there's not a lot else there in his game and so on. But Zaroury looked like a player who would step up, and I still think could. There's no reason why he can have the impact that Koleosho and Odebert have had, in my opinion. unless there is something we don't know about. So I hope he doesn't go to Hull. I hope he stays, and I hope he gets a chance in the side, and he proves Vincent Kompany wrong. I really do.
There we go. That's our direct plea to Vincent Kompany. Save Zaroury. I think we need to get Ashlyn on the case there. Try and find out where he's being kept under lock and key. Anyway, let's leave it there. Let's leave it on that cheery note. Enjoy the cup game tonight, especially if you're travelling down to London and you're listening to us in your ears as you're on the Sherpa van minibus down to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Hopefully, it is going to be the start of a glorious cup run.
In case there are on the way back on that bus.
That's it. Get the rosettes out. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Be at BHole Podcast on Twitter, X, and Facebook. And yeah, give us a like, a review, a rate, a share, subscribe. Do everything you can. We're again tinkering in the top 100 football podcasts in Great Britain again, which is fantastic given the quality and the kind of investment in a lot of those titles. But until next time, we'll be back after the weekend with a debrief of the Spurs game. Enjoy your weekend and up the Clarets.